I'm gonna let you in on a little secret.
Oh, dude. Oh, dude, he looks so... Dude, his model is so excellent. There he is. I'm not worried about other routes. Dude, are we on Radical Highway?
I love Shadow the Hedgehog.
Before this is over, I'll show you the true power of chaos control!
I'm Devious Diesel. You may know me from my insane Pokemon videos. On second thought, maybe you don't. But now you do! Hooray for you! Joke's on you, now you're caught in my web of internet insanity. Shadow the Hedgehog is one of my favorite characters in modern media. Certainly one of my favorite video game characters and anti-heroes. I'm sure you've heard countless people share their opinions on this beloved character, so I'm certainly not reinventing the wheel.
Oh, stop him!
But there is a reason that so many people seem to identify with Shadow. Shadow's story is both tragic and beautiful, he's both dark but inspiring, he's both a renegade and a team player. A team leader even, so fundamentally he's complex and inherently interesting. And need we point out this design? God, I'm so glad we didn't get whatever this abomination was. People adore just how badass and cool this character is.
Uh-oh. Yeah! Yes! Oh my god.
The iconic jet skates and his smooth animations as he flies up and down the highways, taking down robots and aliens alike. And his signature abilities? Chaos Control and Chaos Spear? Come on, guys. It doesn't get much better than the ultimate life form. But why do I, and so many others, feel this way? Well, I think this game has made the reasons clearer than ever before, and that is our topic of discussion today. I'm so happy to say that where Sanic Generations failed me, and believe me, we'll get into it. Oh my god, please. Shadow Generations absolutely blew me away.
This is everything I wanted it to be.
My only complaint is that it isn't longer. However, for being merely a supplemental game, or companion piece if you will, to Sanic Generations, I firmly believe this masterpiece was a blessing. This video will of course be a review, and will show my experiences with the game, but hopefully it'll also be a thorough discussion about just why I love this character so dearly. No, I'm probably not gonna say anything revolutionary about the character that you've never heard before, but I've always wanted to do this, and the release of Shadow Generations is the perfect excuse. Please note that this video will contain heavy spoilers of the story and everything else material to the game, so go play it. We need to show Sega that we want a full-on modern Shadow game, and the only way we can do that is by buying it and making it known to them that they're on the right track with this. With any luck, maybe some other AAA developers will take notice and follow suit, but I'm not holding my breath. I am so excited to share this hard work with you all, as a labor of my love for this character and this franchise. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy, and thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. This Sonic Okay, I'll see myself out. I also wanted to make a quick note that since this is my first retrospective style video, it'll probably be a little bit more serious, straightforward, and informational than the rest of my videos so far. But I hope that you guys enjoy it nonetheless. Also, I had originally intended to review both games side by side, as I'd never played the original Generations. That was, to say the least, a horrible experience, and much of the footage I had recorded was much too laggy and distorted due to that game's poor optimization or possibly hardware restrictions.
I definitely thought you could break through that. And by the way, like, it doesn't do a good enough job of telling you when the boost sections are over.
Instead, I'll give a brief overview of my thoughts on the experience with Sonic Generations, and refer back to it where needed. There is some important context needed to properly convey my thoughts on the Shadow Generations review. Please don't take any of this personally, since it's only my own opinion, but I had an overall horrible experience with the Sonic portion of Generations. I love Sonic, so please don't misunderstand this as purely just character bias. Sonic, especially Adventure-era Sonic, is a character that I love almost as much as Shadow, albeit for vastly different reasons. The fun-loving, incorrigible Blue Blur is iconic for a reason, and those early games really showed his personality best in my own humble opinion. The Sonic we were presented in Adventure, 1 and 2, and Heroes was a character who grew alongside his friends. He was a fun and hilarious character that still had depth and an interesting foundation with room to improve even more. Something rough transition into 3D. Now, Sonic Generations failed me for a few basic reasons. The controls, particularly Sonic's homing attack, were absolutely dreadful.
I'm not gonna lie. Sonic kind of feels like shit.
For whatever reason, Sonic drops like a rock after reaching the apex of his homing attack. Maybe this is an overall trend in the boost games in general, of which I'm certainly no expert.
No, I'm so bad.
But I can tell you that it essentially ruined Sonic's controls for me. I mean, it's one of the core parts of his movement, for f***ing sake. If he doesn't feel good to control, then what am I doing? The rest of the controls felt overall poor as well. Obviously, I don't love the boosting and drifting sections, which is nothing you haven't heard from an adventure fan before. There are also far too many sections which seem to hamper your momentum.
Oh my god, hello, fucking hello!
When these games should really be about speeding through obstacles as fast as possible and keeping a fluid chain of attacks and precise movements. Think Final Rush, which is the single best stage in that game, don't at me. The performance and optimization was embarrassingly bad. Even in Sonic's White Space Hub. This may be purely just playing on Switch, but why was it even so bad here, with so few elements on the screen? The Switch can handle games, it's not completely incapable of it, as we'll see in Shadow's section, so I really don't think that this is acceptable. This is the main reason why I decided to abandon the two-part video review idea, as the footage was essentially unusable under any combination of OBS recording settings and preferences. I just could not get it to work. I literally refuse to say more on this next point other than modern Sonic should not ever be in 2D, point blank, period, end of story.
Wait, why are we in 2D?
No, literally. I am not going to elaborate further. Classic Sonic is heartbreakingly terrible.
I don't have time for this, Classic.
I mean, I was never really a fan of the classics, as my story started with Adventure. Even still, I found a bit of entertainment with the Sonic Advance series, which had a very similar design philosophy to the classic games. I knew I wasn't going to love these stages, but I really wanted to try and at least like them, even if just a little bit. It, for me, is absolutely impossible.
Oh no, f*** you, gel. What is this, a repel gel? From the game Paper Mario the movie?
If I'm playing a 2D platformer, I want it to be fast-paced like Mega Man Zero or Azure Striker Gunvolt. I want movement tech and options. I want that fluidity. I want to be able to perform interesting tricks and techniques. Classic Sonic is not only extremely boring to play as, but he just doesn't have any cool techniques or tricks or maneuvers that he can do to keep the gameplay fresh. Not to mention, if you reduce speed too much, or God forbid, stop, good luck moving again. Matter of fact, good luck doing any precise platforming.
Dude. Aha!
He is the worst combination of both sticky and slippery.
And he takes forever to turn around, like, holy shit.
So many sections of jumping on platforms slowly, one after another. Ugh, I can't keep talking about this. I'm not gonna say I'm sorry, but it really just is a shame. I wanted to like it, and I couldn't.
No, oh my god, why?
I appreciate you bearing with me, as this context is very important. When I first booted up Shadow Generations, I was worried that he was going to control a little bit like modern Sonic, and that would have been a nightmare. But thankfully, this story has a very happy ending. Let's talk about a game that absolutely blew me away. This game is self-contained and focuses entirely on Shadow's own journey. We will come to find out during the introductory cutscene that the events of the game take place simultaneously to Sonic Generations. So when the great time demon comes a-knockin', so too do Shadow's jet skates get to rockin'. I made a funny laugh. However, it'll be gone just as quickly as it appears, and from that point on, it's Sonic's problem. This was a good choice.
Worthless consumer models!
It is immediately evident that there is much better presentation in Shadow Generations, both in the cutscenes and the gameplay proper.
Yes! What? Oh my god! Oh my fucking god!
Sonic Gen seems so poorly optimized right from the beginning, which severely hampered my ability to enjoy it. On this side of the story, Shadow is moving and grooving like never before. We'll get to the actual mechanics in a bit, but I'll just say for now, I couldn't have been more impressed with his playability and the game's performance. In fact, the few videos I've seen captured on higher-end consoles and PC look even better. Environments are lovingly and faithfully crafted and redesigned. Character models look vibrant and crisp, enemies are thoughtfully chosen. God, just look at those gun robots, I'm drooling. Our overworld is quite frankly a joy to explore, despite it being relatively simple. I mean, just put that next to Sonic Generations' 2D nightmare. Yeesh. Please, never again with that horrible atrocity. You get my point. This thing looks and feels like a dream come true, and I'm playing it on arguably the weakest system. And if that doesn't prove my point, I literally don't know what will. Our dark and brooding hedgehog friend is sporting arguably his all-time greatest moveset, movement tech, and powers in this outing. Shadow Generations is apparently built from the same engine as Frontiers, and while I've never played it, I can say that this is one of, if not my favorite engines I've ever experienced for a Sonic game. I would even argue that Shadow feels better to control in this game than he does in his original outing, Sonic Adventure 2. Some games just have that perfect balance of fluidity, momentum, and tight control that come together to form a perfect union of gameplay. I'm happy to say that this is exactly what you can expect from Shadow Generations. Side note, I think they were going for a similar feel with Dream Team, which also controls in a similar, albeit more simplified way. That's a subject for another day, but if you have access to it, you should play it. It's unbelievably good. Something Dream Goat Mommy Milkers. No, don't cancel! As far as standard movement is concerned, the animation looks almost as good as Adventure, which we've not seen in years. There was something about his jet skates and momentum mechanics in his first outing that really scratched my itch. But I will say that they are finally finding their stride again with the way Shadow looks in motion. The homing attack is of course just like it's always been, and thankfully locks on from very far away. Seriously far away. Okay, how did I even make that? Better yet, unlike Sonic, Shadow doesn't drop like a damn cinder block when he stops actively homing attacking, creating a much more friendly user experience and platforming or combat options. This is not the last time I'll say something along those lines. When you homing attack an enemy, however, you won't do the standard yellow ball animation. You will instead teleport, through walls and obstacles mind you, to your target and do a little kicking attack animation. This feels and looks very powerful and impressive. It's like a much more realized version of his attack pattern in 06. You can of course chain these attacks as well, just like the normal homing attack. I would have preferred he switched between a few different attack animations, but it's not terribly offensive. The platforming is intense enough that you're probably not going to be too worried about his repeated attack pattern. In addition to these great foundational elements, Shadow also has the endlessly entertaining Chaos Spear to quickly strike faraway enemies with a ranged bolt. Or break the game, apparently? And his trademark Chaos Control to briefly stop time to make the most of quick platforming sections that require precision. That is where the out-of-the-box moveset ends, but the real fun begins.
This is where the fun begins.
Congratulations!
Shadow will obtain 5 new moves through plot events over the course of his adventure. An improvement to his Chaos Spear, allowing you to fire off 5 at once after a brief charging period.
Doom Spears!
A melee combo which sends enemies flying and allows you to teleport to their location to reach faraway areas.
So now he's got his, oh shit, Doom Blast!
A Manta Ray style mount for water travel, and yes, you will need that.
Bro, Black Manta? Doom Surf, okay, that's a little corny.
A Lovecraftian squid creature to traverse some purple goo, which unfortunately doesn't control very well in my own opinion, but it's still pretty cool nonetheless. And yes, you definitely will need this too.
What? That's fucking insane. Lovecraftian.
Lastly, a flying form which he can use to glide short distances in the overworld and in stages. You don't really need this one, but we'll get into its place in the game later.
Bro, oh, stop it. Stop it. What the
These abilities, in addition to his moveset, make Shadow an absolute powerhouse and feel great to control. I am hoping against all hope that we get a full-length Shadow title with these exact controls and mechanics, hopefully this year, but if not, maybe 2026. As a final note, the game does include 2D sections. As you know during my Sonic Generations disclaimer section, I'm not generally a fan of two-dimensional Sonic levels. However, due to the Ultimate Lifeform's tech options and user-friendly yet challenging gameplay experience, the 2D portions are actually quite impressive. The spectacle is capitalized on as much as it is appropriate, and the level design is thoughtful and gorgeous to look at. Sure, I'll always prefer 3D Sonic gameplay, but as far as these are concerned, I'm not terribly disappointed. We'll delve into this a little bit further when we get into each stage specifically. I won't dive deeply into the story here since we've got a nice little section for that later, or maybe not so little. For now, let's go ahead and take a look at each stage individually. I'll also go ahead and rank them from 1 to 10 for how much I personally enjoyed them, with 1 being the lowest, although I will be doing a full tier list probably at some other time. Now let's get into some incredible stages. I mentioned earlier that my only real complaint about this brilliantly designed game is that it's relatively short. I'm sure I'm not alone in that sentiment. I mean, I worried about this through my whole playthrough, since the whole experience was blind. That being said, we did get another one-act stage released as DLC, and what we had at release was pretty substantive. The stages themselves are split into 2 acts. A standard style 3D stage, which usually lasts somewhere between 5 and 8 or maybe 10 minutes at a casual pace, and a second 2D act, which is usually somewhere between 3 to 6 minutes depending on the level. So basically, these stages are designed to be slightly longer than Sonic Generations stages in both gameplay formats. They last long enough to really bite into and get a good flow going, but not so long that it's a chore. I'm looking at you, Sonic Heroes. It should be mentioned that half of the 3D stages have a psychedelic hallucination section. Whoa, trippy bro. You're cruising along during the level, taking out enemies and flying through obstacles, and then all of a sudden a kaleidoscope of Golden Gate bridges opens up before you. That's right, we're back in Radical Highway, baby. These diversions are not at all offensive, but since we ended up getting a full Radical Highway stage at the end, more on that later, I kinda wish we'd gone with something else. Either way, there's a thematic reason why we're using it for these segments, so I've made my peace with it.
Okay.
Before we get into the stages themselves, let's talk about white space. Just like Sonic and his friends, Shadow 2 gets sucked into a strange white void. Probably could have used better phrasing on that. However, this time, it's a fully explorable and traversable 3D area. In fact, speaking of 3D, the exploration style is actually very similar to something like Bowser's Fury. They're both supplemental games that take place in a strange area which opens up to you as you complete more of it. Each boss that you defeat opens up a new segment of white space, either literally or through movement options. The design of this area is fantastic, sort of an On Orlando castle aesthetic with white and gold and black. Well, maybe it's nothing like that. I've never played Elden Souls. Don't unsubscribe!
You are weak.
There are rails to grind, enemies to attack, tons of secrets to find, and collectibles to unlock.
Yes, sir.
In each of the main sections, you'll find a diorama, I love these by the way, representing each stage in the game, whose aesthetic stretches out before it and into some of the surrounding geometry. As you complete the acts, it opens up more, and then upon completing the challenge gates, you unlock more still. In its final iteration, white space is a fun and engaging level in and of itself. I spent a good while even just in my first playthrough running around and grinding and testing out Shadow's movement abilities and tech. There are a few side quests as well, and while nothing too revolutionary, it's just some more stuff for you to do while you control Shadow. Content good. Let's start out with what I consider my favorite stage, but mostly because of its nostalgia value. Keep in mind, all of these stages do stand up on their own and are substantive each and all.
Stage 1, Space Colony Arc.
Yeah, that's right. The Mad Lads did it! This new iteration of the arc is fantastic. We'll get into the music later, but I can't tell you how exciting it was for me to see Shadow grinding down the rail to a new iteration of Highway in the Sky and jumping headfirst into the architecture. See what I did there?
Yes! Yes! Oh my god, yes!
The arc looks as great as ever. The level geometry, the background, the enemies. It feels so right to grind up and down these glowing rails and through the rotating glowing gates. There are some new set pieces, such as these lanes of rockets and magnetic platforms, but the new additions are largely what you would expect, and better even. Special shout out to that QuickTime event where Shadow Roundhouse kicks a giant ICBM into the space station. I mean, come on, guys. This is like sickeningly cool. This is, of course, our first view into the Doom segments, and our exploration of alternate reality Radical Highway. Say that 5 times fast. It looks great, and is mostly very exciting to play through. I will say that at times these sections feel a bit on rails, but I realize they're mostly going for nostalgia and spectacle. Don't misunderstand, the gameplay in these sections is great, just like the rest of the game. After this segment, we're spat out at the Arc Control Center and the Goal Ring.
I think that was the single most exciting platformer experience I've ever had.
This level easily gets a 10 out of 10 for me. As the first stage in the game, it's certainly no pushover, and the pure heart-pounding nostalgia and adrenaline injection, chef's kiss. I'm a huge Final Rush guy, obviously, so this was always going to be colored by my bias, and it is for sure a winner.
I am so grateful that this exists and that I get to play it. This is amazing.
Ultimate victory.
Act 2 sees us exploring a 2-dimensional rendition of Final Chase. With this first level, and the next one as well, they come from games that have these levels in sets of 2, unlike the later examples we'll see. So I'm really glad that they made good use of that. We have similar set pieces as the first act, however in this act we also have the magnetic gravity pillars that rotate. Most people hate them. I really don't, honestly. Don't unsubscribe. It's all around fantastic. There is a short section wherein we take flight with Shadow's wings. What the? We're going to explore that towards the end of the game, and its inclusion here is odd. It doesn't really hold any significance to the plot at this point, and it just seems to randomly tutorialize them, but then they're not unlocked until the very end of the story. Either way, it's mostly fine. 8 out of 10 for being a perfectly fine introduction to Shadow's 2D stages, for all the same reasons that Act 1 got a great score, and for being nostalgic of one of my other favorite levels, Final Chase.
This is gonna sound crazy, but I think this might be my favorite Sonic game I've ever played.
Now you know why I am the best.
All in all, especially visually, these levels are my favorite. I'll reiterate that I do have some bias towards Sonic Adventure 2's Space Colony arc. It'll always hold a special place in my heart. Stage 2, Rail Canyon.
Yes, oh my god, yes! Yes, please!
Oh yeah, baby. So, I was a little torn at first, thinking perhaps there was a better inclusion for the Sonic Heroes entry. But I quickly realized that the only better groupings of stages would have either been Power Plant or the Egg Fleet set. And for some reason, I always just associate this set of stages with Team Dark anyway. I think that maybe Team Dark's Rail Canyon and Bullet Station gave me a lot of trouble when I was younger. Maybe that's what it is. Rail Canyon looks gorgeous in its new coat of paint. All the classic elements are here. Rails, obviously, the switches that turn the red rails blue, the little Rhino trains, and the Big Devil freight trains. Even the great inclusion of the huge Bullet Station terminal at the end of the level. That, guys, was a nice touch. The first set of levels in the game is no pushover, but this is where the game really starts to kick into high gear. There are a number of quick maneuvers needed, especially for each stage's 3 collectible chest keys, and there are optimizations that you can make that require very precise timing and movement. It's delicious. This was the point in my playthrough where I really started to actualize my skill level and utilize the various tech and started having real fun.
It's not a bad thing at all, but it's like a little disorienting to spear and homing attack. I'm sure I'll get better at it. I just it's like a lot to be worrying about.
If you like the Rail Canyon levels in Heroes, this is basically just that, but even better. Nearly as long, too. Or at least it feels that way. We have another Radical Highway drug trip in this level, and this was actually my least favorite one. There are a few sections in this game that involve slowly falling and navigating obstacles on your way down, and that's unfortunately a big portion of this Doom segment, although I think there are a couple of skips you can do to make it a little better. This is also where I noticed that you can fail these segments if you don't attack Doom in the right time frame, and that will prevent you from obtaining a new power-up later. If you do, it's fine. The game will just instruct you to replay the level, which as we know is certainly no punishment in this case. Rail Canyon gets an easy 8 out of 10, with the only points docked due to the less than optimal style of the Doom segment.
Oh my god.
Now you know why I am the best.
Bullet Station is back, and this time we're hitting it from the side. Was that a funny 2D joke, or was that just weird? The gimmick of these stages is jumping side to side on rail chains, so that's lost a bit in this stage. However, I do think they made the most with what they had. The 2D sections are naturally a bit slower, so I think this one was always just gonna feel bogged down since Act 1, and the original Bullet Station, is so fast-paced. The slowdown is particularly offensive during the scripted rail sections where you're dodging cannon fire, though you're intended to chaos skip through at least part of it. It's certainly not enough to cause serious frustration, and if you can tolerate even one of these side-scrolling levels, you'll probably like all of them. I can say this gets a fair 7 out of 10 for me.
That was cool!
Stage 3. Kingdom Valley. This is the point in Sonic history which my knowledge runs a bit dry. Originally, I didn't really prefer this level, and while it's still not my favorite, I have absolutely grown to appreciate the many ways that you can tackle Kingdom Valley. There's a lot of different pathway options, and that feels great. They make excellent use out of the air rails that you need to homing attack to activate, and of course the set pieces of the eagle riding and breaking through the stained glass. Thankfully, this time we can play through the level without incessant glitches.
It's no use!
Hooray! I guess now's the best time to talk about it, but I'm really not sure why only certain levels got the Doom Zone treatment. It's never really explained why he only shows up in a few of the levels. And Kingdom Valley is one of these stages which Doom is absent from. I honestly wish they would have committed to one or the other, either having them in every single stage, or having them in none of the stages, and giving us one whole stage more in the game. It's kind of weird that they went half and half with it. Still, if I'm just complaining about consistency, then things really could be much worse, so I'll leave you with that. This level recently got a bump from 6 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 for me.
Okay, what? Bro, stop it.
Now you know why I am the best.
From here on, the second act will not actually represent any specific level, as was the case in the first 2 stage sets. This disappoints me, but unfortunately the games that they originate from don't really have examples of this. Final Rush has Final Chase, Rail Canyon has Bullet Station, but what other level could you attach to Kingdom Valley without just creating an entirely new level, defeating the purpose, or adding something totally different? I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think would be a better way to incorporate the 2 stages per level concept for 06? I guess I just enjoyed packing in 2 iconic levels worth of nostalgia per Generations level. Oh, the woes of an adventure era fan. Kingdom Valley Act 2 does have some annoying pillar nonsense that I don't love, so this one gets a bit of a low rating for me. 4 out of 10.
I gotta do better next time.
Stage 4. Sunset Heights.
This has got to be Shadow the Hedgehog. It has to be. What is this? What the hell is this?
So, I'm probably going to lose a bit of credibility here. At this point in the game, I was really a bit astounded by the fact that I'd not seen a Shadow the Hedgehog 05 level yet. We were past that era after Kingdom Valley, and I was running out of ideas.
Gamers, I am dumbfounded. I have no idea what this is.
I had never played anything past Shadow the Hedgehog except Colors. I know. Look, the Boost era never really intrigued me, and I had fallen out of love with the series. The reason that I'm bringing this up is that I had no idea what Sunset Heights was, and why Shadow was exploring it. So as it turns out, this is a level in Sonic Forces, and that was part of Shadow's very brief campaign, which I literally forgot existed. It makes more sense now, which is more than I can say for the next level. Anyway, this level was fairly action-packed. It's sort of near the bottom for me, but definitely not bad by any means, especially compared to its origin from what I hear. The giant Death Egg robots in the background make for great set pieces, and it does feel and look amazing to run up the lanes while they fire lasers into the foreground and background. This level also introduces an illusory enemy that Black Doom saves for special occasions, and they can be really annoying to deal with. This is our last Radical Highway portion, and it has an annoying, but rewarding, tunnel segment which requires you to travel in a corkscrew around it and dodge the geometric burning obstacles. Definitely tricky, and maybe even a little bit cheap, but cool nonetheless. A nice 6 out of 10 for me.
What the f*** is Sunset Heights?
That was cool!
Sunset Heights Act 2 was unfortunately one of the worst levels in this game, both in the initial playthrough and also the challenges. It's a bit of a toss-up between this and the next Act 2, but I think this was one of the most frustrating of the 2D offerings, if not the actual worst in my own opinion. I don't want to talk about it. 2 out of 10. Force is bad.
I should have tried a little harder.
Stage 5, Chaos Island. Okay, so this level is absolutely a visual feast. My god. The contrast of the bright purple goo and the bright orange magma looks gorgeous. The volcano in the background, chef's kiss. But either way, it's a Frontiers level, so I honestly have no idea how this ended up here. I'm assuming they just wanted to continue the Generations nostalgia with more recent games in Shadow's campaign, since the original gens didn't have a Forces or Frontiers level, obviously. I do think it's really cool that it was included, so please don't mistake my confusion for disappointment or frustration. Spectacle is on full display here. The volcano and the magma really give the impression that time is running out. Unfortunately, this is the point in the game where you've just received the Doom morph, so that is part of this level's design philosophy and traversal methods. Still, it gives us the purple-orange color scheme, so I'll take it. The quick reaction sections needed for shortcuts and skips are delightful, and the volatile and sharp scenery makes for a perfect backdrop as you tear through this second to last level. Very enjoyable platforming overall. Believe it or not, this gets a 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh my god! What is happening?
How is that? Perfect? Like me?
Act 2 is absolutely horrendous though, I'm sad to say. The squid sections are way worse and overused, and it just brings out the least enjoyable aspects of the 2D levels. I enjoyed what I could of it, but that wasn't very much. I'll say that the background in the cavernous sections is very cool, and it's almost as visually appealing as the last level. It just feels like there's so little you're actually doing, since most of the level is being shot out of those Doom morph cannons. It also has one of those ride up and down a platform by jumping or standing still sections, similar to the Sky Sanctuary Act 2. I just cannot stand those. 1 out of 10, personal least favorite level in the game, though it's technically not as annoying as Sunset Heights Act 2.
Which is a bit of a shame, but still, beautiful level.
I should have tried a little harder.
They didn't include it as its own standalone stage, so instead they gave you like 2.5 worth of Radical Highway in other what the fuck is Sunset Heights?
Stage 6, Radical Highway. I promise you revenge. Yes, that's right. I'm sure to many of you this was obvious. The sentiment online seems to be about 50-50. However, I'm firmly in the camp of I totally thought Black Comet was going to be the last level. Look, please understand that this level is fantastic, and it's not by any means a complaint at all about what we did get. The problem is that somehow these guys managed to completely fail to represent Shadow the Hedgehog 05 with its own stage. Some people are saying the Arc was the Shadow level, and that's just like objectively incorrect and misses the point. I'm gonna get into my feelings about that a little bit more later, but for now, let's talk about the Radical Highway. I mean the real Radical Highway. Perfection.
Oh my god, dude. Talk about hectic. This is like one of these ones where you really got to be paying attention to what you're doing on this.
This stage is absolutely asshole clenching and anxiety inducing in the best way. I'll be the first to say, my first time playthrough was absolutely terrible.
Okay.
I got a D rank on both stages.
That's pretty pathetic. I could do way better.
But then I went back and got some better scores when I got the B-roll footage. The stage starts out just like the original, with our protagonist screaming down the side of one of those support beams on the quote-unquote Golden Gate Bridge, legally distinct enough not to be sued. Believe me when I tell you that these last 2 stages are on a whole different level of difficulty. Your reactions need to be lightning quick, chaos spear into homing attacks with barely any time to plot your course, sliding sections requiring precise movement, rail hopping, and last-minute spring jumping. This thing has it all. A few of the people I've seen talk about this stage sounded disappointed, but I personally am not. I'm grateful and excited to have this awesome level. I just wish it didn't come at the cost of something else. This is the best level in the game in terms of gameplay, and it ties with the Arc for my favorite level, partly due to the nostalgia. 10 out of 10.
Radical Highway, man.
Ultimate victory.
Ugh, Act 2. Yet another 2D stick.
Obviously 2D, but...
Wait a minute.
What? I'm sorry? What?
Yup, they pulled a fast one on us. Act 2 of Radical Highway is a 3D stage. I absolutely lost it when I saw this. I was so unbelievably excited. And it's even harder than the first, too.
Oh, back in the saddle, baby. Oh no, these things. Oh, Jesus.
I think the reason is the lack of challenge gates, so they wanted to beef up the content on this last section of the game. That, or purely based on just how iconic it is, and they were really pushing the Radical Highway importance, obviously. More upside-down insanity, more crazy rail grinding, those tubular sections, it's all here. You'd better get through in one piece. Listen, no hate from me, man. I always have, and always will, love Radical Highway. There are definitely some annoying moments, though, in this stage. The mini-bosses, though they can be skipped with some smooth movements, are super pace-breaking. And honestly, some of the platforming feels like it's a little too hard. A number of times in my playthrough, I was like, okay, I definitely landed that. So I'm gonna say it safely evens out at about 8 out of 10, and definitely gets a huge bump for being a 3D Act 2.
Now you know why I am the best.
Stage 7, Tokyo.
Now it's time to tackle the DLC level we received a little while after release. Tokyo is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, I'll say that visually the level is quite impressive, but I'm also not a huge fan of Shadow's movie model.
He looks great in the movie itself, and those are totally different circumstances. But I feel like for the game, the proportions are just all wrong, and the hairs are very uncanny. I'm also not crazy about them changing his glow energy from yellow to reddish orange. However, when Shadow rolls up into a ball, he looks pretty good. There's some extra texture on his model, so I guess that's cool. Bit of a back and forth on presentation, but I think generally it succeeds at what it's trying to do.
As far as the gameplay is concerned, I quite enjoyed most of it, with the exception of 3 glaring issues.
There is a huge cutscene on top of the train, which takes you completely out of the action. I think they're trying to make it a little bit more aligned with the movie, although I actually don't remember him doing what he does on top of the train. But there was no way to incorporate more gameplay here? I mean, come on guys, this is pretty egregious, especially for a paid DLC level. The second is that it is far too short. The level can comfortably be beaten in under 3 minutes, especially if you play it perfectly and optimize, which is what this game pushes you to do, and it feels much better in the longer stages. The third, and my biggest issue, is that there could have easily been an Act 1 and Act 2. I realize they're trying to probably go one-to-one with the movie, but that absolutely came at the cost of gameplay, and I'm not afraid to talk about my dissatisfaction with that. Tokyo could have easily been split up into 2 acts. Just take a tiny bit of creative license and make the train yard section and then the lab section longer. Or better yet, give us 2 scenes from the movie? Oh, it'll spoil it. So then literally just wait until it releases? Honestly, the more I talk about how this went down, the more it irritates me. I don't hate this level, but they just seemingly made every wrong move here, especially knowing that we didn't get a Shadow 05 level, and we got this. Well, there's still hope to hold out. Maybe we'll get one in the future.
That's it? Oh. Alright, well, let's do the extras. Damn, man!
The challenge acts are fine. I mean, they're also very short, just like the level. I really don't know what else to tell you. Don't get me wrong, I love playing more of this game, but there's a reason why this fell near the bottom of my rankings. As of writing the script, and now recording, there is no other DLC announced. I hope so badly that we do get at least one more level pack, hopefully with Shadow 05 levels. Otherwise, it'll be up to the modders, who I hope are hard at work making custom levels already. Time will tell. 3 out of 10, and hurt significantly by that overly long cutscene.
Well, it's over! It's over. Yeah, look, I enjoyed it.
I gotta do better next time.
There is one thing I was thinking about as far as the stages are concerned, and I guess this is a perfect place to share it. If I had one wish for a new level as an add-on or DLC, other than a Shadow 05 level, of course, which I've talked to death at this point, it would be an Adventure 1 Egg Carrier style stage. Something with the best elements of Final Egg and Hot Shelter mixed together. Yes, I know, Hot Shelter is technically the only one that's on the egg carrier, but you get my point. I would love to see the set piece of the train that Gamma rides on during his part of Hot Shelter. It would be awesome. Hopefully the modders can take care of that for us. I'm looking at you guys.
The bosses are not terribly difficult, but they are indeed exciting and well designed. I will say that they were carried hard by nostalgia, and probably won't hold up that much on a replay. Or will they? Yes, that's right, but we'll have to talk about hard mode later. They sort of follow a Generations theme, but not exactly the theme you'd expect. Essentially, there are 3 different iconic shadow bosses in chronological order. However, they do not follow the stage eras. Here is the formula. For the Adventure era, the Ark and Rail Canyon, we have the Bio-Lizard. For the Boost era, Kingdom Valley and Sunset Heights, we have Metal Overlord. And for the Modern era, Chaos Island, we have Mephiles the Dark. And then of course the final boss, which is Devil Doom and Neo Devil Doom, reigning over Radical Highway. The Bio-Lizard.
Let's start things off with one of my all-time favorite Sonic the Hedgehog bosses. No, seriously.
The original Bio-Lizard fight was something that gave me intense difficulty when I was a kid, and then a young adult, playing SA2B, and was so rewarding when I finally defeated it in both cases. It's pretty difficult. The Generations version is much more accessible. I wouldn't necessarily call it easy. Well, maybe it is. But I would say overall the bosses require much less intense timing and skill than the stages. I get the feeling that the most important philosophy with the bosses was both spectacle and nostalgia, and they nailed both. The Bio-Lizard will change forms partway through and grow these huge arms which have growths on them, which are how you will work your way up its body and hit the weak spot. The final section is extremely hectic, and you'll need to Chaos Spear multiple pink balls over and over again in waves, finally allowing you to strike the last blow. Beautiful fight, great boss. To be honest, I don't really have any notes. It was a great way to bring back this extremely iconic boss, and then subvert expectations when it grows huge-ass arms and starts jumping around like a madman.
Oh my god! That was excellent. I was probably making the most insane face during that whole thing.
Metal Overlord. So, I will admit, my reaction to this was hilariously embarrassing.
What is this? What?
The reason I was so surprised is that I had expected it to be a boss of the Boost era, since those were the levels we had just beaten. I had not yet figured out that the bosses were following their own generations. Either way, it was an unexpected but much appreciated inclusion.
A quick piece of Devious Diesel trivia for you. My electronic song Dockin' Bay was actually written for a level that I designed that bears a striking similarity to the arena that we fight Metal Overlord in.
It's funny because Metal Madness and Overlord are both fought in the sky, so they just randomly decided to give it the stormy factory arena aesthetic, and I think that's pretty cool. But again, that's partly colored by my bias in the whole Dockin' Bay thing. And I've actually since found out that this is apparently meant to be Chemical Plant, I guess partly as a reference to Metal Sonic himself, but also since they just can't stop using that aesthetic these days. Some people hate it, but it doesn't bother me much. At this point in the game, Shadow has just acquired his water traversal ability, the Doom Surf, and the developers made the ballsy decision to have the entire fight take place on the water. I would say I have mixed feelings about this, but I am grateful that the battle that we got was well realized and well executed. I was not only blown away by nostalgic bliss when seeing Metal Overlord again, but I was also astounded that I genuinely had as much fun as I did with this boss fight. It's on rails, it's entirely water-based, and the bulk of the damage is done by spinning into these containers which fly off into the Metal Menace. Despite all that, it's pretty great. Watch out for those swipe attacks though. The timing can be pretty tricky to get down. This was definitely the fight that gave me the most trouble the first go around.
Can Trash Twister? Trash Hurricane? That was hard as hell.
Mephiles the Dark.
Look at him. Oh shit. What? Bro, that sword?
Another great thematic inclusion. All of these bosses had at least a pretty strong connection to Shadow. Metal Overlord was more of a combined connection from the events of Heroes, and ending the main bosses on Mephiles was a great move. That being said, this was by far the easiest, despite having to use the Doom Morph to navigate the goo in the arena. You're tasked with dodging a shark-like fin while walking slowly over the purple goo, then getting an opportunity to Doom Morph and strike at Mephiles. Ultimately, you'll need to knock him into the air with Doom Blast, and then back into the Mario 64 style power pylons on the edge of the arena. I would say that this battle is easy, but I can appreciate it. I disliked it a lot less than I imagined I would, being that it leans so heavily on my least favorite traversal mechanic. A great boss inclusion overall, and man does he do Mephiles dirty at the end there.
Oh, damn.
Final boss, Devil Doom. Devil Doom is no surprise here, and his updated model looks quite a bit better than it did back in the day. However, I really was never a huge fan of this boss's design. I think it looks relatively amorphous and blob-like, so ugh. Look guys, it's Yagram Bagarn. Bottom text. I don't remember this fight being very remarkable when I was younger or when revisiting Shadow 05 back in 2011. I should probably play that again soon. But from what I can remember, this was a pretty great improvement for the demonic leader of the Black Arms.
The final boss fight itself is a lot of fun. It comes in 2 segments, Devil Doom and Neo Devil Doom.
The first portion of the fight is laid out in a similar fashion to Metal Overlord. We surf with Doom Morph along a flooded Radical Highway, of course, he loves Radical Highway, and spin attack the explosives onto Doom just like we did with our metal friend back in the mid-section of the game. After a few attacks into him, he'll pull you through a portal for Phase 1B. This was my least favorite, as you can imagine, and possibly the most anxiety-inducing. You must use the Doom Morph to traverse crooked and tilted platforms, and perform a few attacks on its weak spot. It's extremely hectic, and each hit sends you further back to traverse more platforms the next time. Again, I'm not a fan of the morph mechanics, but I think this is otherwise fine as a concept, and I think it makes sense to include it since we're using all the traversal methods. Finally, once you reduce his health bar to 0, he'll send you into a cutscene. He transforms one last time, this time into Neo Devil Doom. Thankfully, although Shadow doesn't have the 7 Chaos Emeralds, he still has his wings and his burning desire to end Black Doom once and for all. This portion of the fight will play and feel pretty much exactly the same as the other historical final confrontations, minus the glowing fur, of course. You'll be airborne the entire time, flying past obstacles and dodging attacks from the Dark Menace. Just like in our super form, your ring count will slowly but surely decrease, and if you hit 0, you'll lose your ability to stay in the fight. Instead of boosting into the boss's weak spot, you'll be using your standard lock-on style homing attack when you get close enough, but other than that, this is largely what we know and love. He's got a few main attacks, some of which are worse than others. Doom can swipe vertically and horizontally at you, but they're telegraphed pretty dramatically, so they're usually not a problem. There will also be small periods where he'll fire a few volleys of projectiles at you, and it's crucial to lock on with your multi-spears and break them. This will help replenish your ring count. There are also some environmental and/or obstacle-style techniques that you'll have to deal with, one of which is a tunnel that has the most confounding gravity and attraction physics I've ever seen. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to just get straight through without getting consistently banged into the wall. Arguably even worse are these damned squares. Man, I hate these things. God, anything but that.
Oh, please, not the squares. Please, oh dear God, anything but this. Oh my God, no.
Here's a quick pro tip for you, and actually this screwed me up the first time. You have to hold down the boosting button the whole time. Since you're not Super Shadow, there really isn't as much feedback to show you that you're speeding up in your current boost. I ended up getting stuck in a never-ending loop without getting close enough to damage him. As long as you try your best to stay up close and personal and keep up with him, those targeting reticles will come up before you know it, and after a handful of blows, the battle will be won at last. Just a quick note, since I use all my own music for my videos, obviously we're going to have to play segments of these songs, and I'll denote when they are Sega songs.
As you can imagine, this is one of the topics I was most excited to talk about, as I myself produce music. The tracks in this revival, for the most part, hugely impressed me. Each song was a carefully and thoughtfully crafted remix of the original stage theme.
To me, this was most notable for Final Rush, Rail Canyon, and Bullet Station, since those are the ones that were most memorable to me originally. Each of those themes sounded incredible. Also, thankfully, now it's on all the streaming platforms. I've had it on heavy repeat since it came out. Final Rush's original track, aptly named Highway in the Sky, was a hard one to top, but I think they've actually done it here. It's one of my favorites from Sonic Adventure 2, if not my all-time favorite from that game. The riffs are a lot sharper and clearer, and the drum track is slightly more organic than the original's electronic beat. This version of the iconic track is still in that electronic style and structure, but this is more of a metal song masquerading as an electronic song. However, huge missed opportunity not remixing Final Chase's theme, The Supernatural. That is an all-time great Shadow song. What we got is more reminiscent of Final Rush if it was classic Sonic. I can't help but be disappointed. The problem is that they decided to go with a more serious version in Act 1, and then do Act 2 retro style. Now, I'm not saying be overly serious and edgy, but these 2D levels can and should be taken seriously, and I think it's a shame. I mean, in Generations it makes sense because there's classic Sonic, but we don't have a classic Shadow, so what are you trying to fit it to? I'll huff a little copium and rationalize it by saying that the supernatural was indicative of Shadow's state of mind at the end of SA2, so I guess it wouldn't fit here. But couldn't they use the melody? Ugh. I mean, either way, it is what it is. Rail Canyon's original was never really a song that stood out to me too much, to be perfectly honest with you. But the organs and drums are pretty cool. But this remix? Oh man. I would say this is one of the few that is literally just a strict upgrade and not a matter of preference. The drums hit way harder, and that double kick pedal and those toms are booming, and those organs are just ripping straight through you along with the guitars. This thing feels huge, and I love it. It gives this the epic energy that it deserves. Did somebody say Bullet Station Techno Remix? This is awesome and a little silly in a good way, and actually, I've grown to really love this song since the game came out. This is one of the few places where the Act 2 retroifying actually works really well. It's definitely not strictly better than the original, but a cool and fun version nonetheless. Why didn't they do this for Final Chase?
For the Radical Highway sections, they use segments of a track called Doom Zone on the OST. This is a badass drum and bass slash drum step iteration of the timeless classic, Vengeance is Mine. Guys, this thing is huge, and it represents everything that I love about hardcore electronic music.
I promise I'm not biased due to being primarily a D&B producer, since the rest of the songs are great too. But man, just listen to this. God, it's so cool. I love drum and bass so goddamn much. Kingdom Valley gets the drum and bass treatment as well, but a moody orchestral iteration of it. And yes, like I said, drum and bass is definitely going to be a theme going forward. A lot of the arrangement is very similar to, if not identical to the original, but with a better beat underneath it. I love that Peruvian pan flute section though. That's not a meme. I actually love World Instruments, thanks mostly to Stuart Copeland and the Spyro soundtracks. This is another one that grew on me quite a lot. It's not as intense as the others, no heavy bass sounds or distortion, but it gets the job done nonetheless. Valley Part 2 has a similar arrangement, but throws a hardstyle beat under a large portion of it, and uses the more suspenseful orchestral segments. Not much to say about it. It definitely fits, it just doesn't stand out that much. Sunset Heights has a mix between the modern Sonic style songs with those bright saw synths, and heavy driven guitars and basses in a more hard rock heavy metal rhythm style underlining the song. This was actually an incredible tune. It made me a firm believer in the level while I dodged those Death Egg robots. Who knows? Maybe I'll give Forces a try. I doubt it.
What?
Act 2 of Sunset Heights starts off with a moody piano, but then it quickly does a hard right turn into drum and bass style with some noisy elements in the background and that old faithful saw synth. I don't really love it, but again, I think it's pretty inoffensive. The lead synth definitely keeps that retro style in full swing. Chaos Island hits you with a frenetic D&B tune that really adds to the urgency of the story. The moody elements are perfect for Shadow's melancholic demeanor, and the pumping bass synths and squealing LFO really sell you that things are coming to a head soon. I love that little piano tune. I don't know enough about Frontiers, but I'm really glad they went with this. At first I found it a bit aimless and chaotic, but it really has grown on me. The second act, on the other hand, is kind of all of the worst elements of that retro Act 2 style. I feel like it's too fast, and then when using that lead synth instead of a piano, it removes all the drama and makes the melody sort of almost like patronizing. I don't know. I definitely found it annoying, and I like it way less than the Act 1 version. The highway where it all started, and where the quest for vengeance began. Radical Highway 1 starts with a simple kick and snare and a faint pad, with accents of the chopped up bits of the original riff. And before you know it, you're dropped face first into a D&B drop, which does sound good, but it almost sounds a little bare bones or empty to me. I mean, I really feel like they should have swapped the Doom Zone song and this one. It's certainly not bad by any means, but it's not exactly how I would have executed the penultimate stage's song. Our only 3D second act gets another hectic track, and this one isn't strictly drum and bass since the kick hits on every 8th note. It almost has a more dance-like pattern in that sense. I really don't like it. I don't know what else to say. I think the melody that comes over top, especially that whining synth that appears halfway through the hook, I think it's super annoying. Definitely disappointed for the second half of Radical Highway. I'd say this is one of the few songs in the game that I think is just outright bad. Oh well, I guess they couldn't all be winners. I mean, couldn't they have? Supporting Me, one of my all-time favorite Shadow-related songs, gets a modern treatment with better drums, guitar, and more importantly, bass guitar. The beat goes halftime at a point, which sort of disturbs the original driving flow of the song. And actually, this is one rare occasion where I don't think a heavier remix really does it justice. The original is really very cerebral and trippy, which illustrates Shadow's state of mind declining at the end of the climax of Sonic Adventure 2. Still, I don't hate it by any means. It's supporting me. I'm gonna love it every time. What I'm Made Of is Metal Overlord's theme, which allegedly played during the boss fight in Heroes. I thought it was Sonic Heroes. People on the internet were quick to point out me misremembering that, as you can imagine they would. And honestly, I had no idea this has such a cult following. Some people, like, this is their favorite Crush 40 song. I think it is the most schlocky song the duo ever produced. It's definitely the most phoned in by far, and nothing about it is really particularly memorable or pleasing. I think the pattern of the vocals in the chorus is really awkward. Let me show you just
what
I'm made of. It's like enunciation in all the weirdest parts. I really, really strongly dislike it. I think it's a missed opportunity. I get why they couldn't go with Sonic Heroes. I mean, they couldn't well do Shadow Heroes, could they? Unless... could they?
Shadow Heroes, Shadow Heroes.
The movies.
You like that? That's my really good rendition of Shadow Heroes. It was pretty great. Like and subscribe. Mephiles' theme is totally hectic and unhinged. Take a shot every time I say hectic in this script. Let's take a look at him and see if it's, yeah, that's appropriate. That fits. I mean, I don't have experience with the original Mephiles theming, but this song seems appropriate as anything else. The melody didn't particularly resonate with me, and it's pretty forgettable, but, I mean, whatever.
Ooh.
The developers also opted to have a slowed down and reconstructed version of each level theme song as you're standing in front of the diorama, and these are great.
They're a great build-up to the level you're about to enter. I won't go through all of them, but let's take a look at Space Colony Arcs, for example. See how it's a bit more tense and suspenseful and always slowed down. I think these are an excellent inclusion. Whitespace has its own themes as well, both for the normal version and the Doom Zone Nightmare version when the sky goes red. Neither one is particularly memorable, just somewhat ambient orchestral suites while you traverse the homeworld. I do think they both fit well, and I don't personally think that they should have been any more overstated. There are lots of other minor songs that are on the soundtrack, and I really think you should go check it out for yourself. By the way, Without You is an incredible vocal song that really captures the emotion of this soundtrack and this game in general. I won't spoil that one for you. You should just go listen to it. The story of Shadow Generations is pretty straightforward and simplistic. Keep in mind, this is of course a Generations game. I think that there are two conflicting ideologies at play regarding the Time Demon and the premise for exploring these older stages, the Black Doom overarching plot and the other elements specific to Shadow as well. I think they did an adequate job marrying these two concepts, but in a perfect world we would have just had a totally different setup. I will also say that I'm not terribly pleased that the story itself has virtually nothing to do with the stages. For example, when we meet Maria and Gerald later on Sunset Heights diorama, they didn't have anything to do with the stage. It's not like we rescued them or found them there, it's essentially just play stage, then engage in dialogue and plot points through cutscenes, with no real symmetry between them. It would have been nice if there was at least the pretense of, oh, we have to save Gerald and Maria from the stage.
I could go on and on about this, but I think we should just move on. It's my only real complaint about the story, and if that's the case, then it could be much worse.
On a routine mission for his new employer, remember, Shadow and Rouge work for Gun now, our hero is notified of an energy disturbance aboard Space Colony Ark. Rouge calls Shadow asking if he's going to be showing up to Sonic's birthday party, to which the black and red hedgehog is noticeably irritated. This brings me to another issue I have with this character's direction. Can we just do away with the whole Shadow can't be bothered when it comes to Sonic and his friends? I mean, surely by now they've been through enough that he can at least have a playful rivalry with Sonic and a bit of a friendship with the others. Especially after the closure that this game's story brings, I really hope they take our boy in that direction. Nonetheless, we set out to find the disturbance, only to find that Black Doom, yes, that's right, that Black Doom, is back. And he's better than ever. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Obviously, this has huge implications, and the infuriated hedgehog speeds off through the illusion, giving Doom's minions a smackdown before returning back to reality. Here at the Ark's control room, Shadow cleverly pockets the fake Chaos Emerald from SA2. Surprised to see that it's still around? That's a strange plot device to just keep around for no reason. Just then, uh-oh, somebody had a time-space oopsie. Shadow, don't you know you're not supposed to fall into dimensional portals? Silly guy. Now, in white space, Shadow observes the endless void. The only thing visible at this time is the Arc diorama and Omega?
Weightless consumables.
Okay, guys, like, literally, where did Omega come from? Again, this is a problem with the disconnect between the plot and the story. We should have saved Omega or something. But it actually gets even worse.
Omega literally serves no purpose to the plot and has like 3 lines of dialogue in the whole game. He might not even have 3. Look, I know we're not going to be able to play as him like in Heroes, but could he not have had any more impact on the story at all? One of my favorite Sonic characters of all time, completely wasted. Such a shame.
At this point, you continue through the game as normal, and eventually after defeating the Bio-Lizard, we meet Black Doom face to face. Or face to tentacles, whatever the hell they are. Kinda looks like a butthole, honestly. Hey yo, what Black Doom mouth butthole doing? Naturally, Shadow tries to give him a beatdown, but sadly, the plot needs to happen, so unfortunately, no fighting for now. Play nice.
Great. Well, it was worth a try, right?
After the next few levels, we meet Big the Cat?
I'll find it eventually. Big the Cat? Why? Get away from me. I like cats. But why is Big the Cat here?
Okay, guys, seriously, like, what in the world is Big doing here? What, because he was the only person not in Generations? But Rouge was! See what I mean? The game is incredible, and there are a few important story beats coming up that make a difference for this character, but more often than not, it's just confusing. Whatever. The most crucial friends we encounter in this void are, of course, Maria and Gerald. We have a few different cutscenes with them which genuinely serve to move the plot forward. These are the most consequential conversations we have in the game with any of the supporting cast, and it's good. Honestly, these are great interactions. I love Gerald's portrayal and soft demeanor here. It's almost like these are Shadow's perfect images of these characters, their ideals. Anyway, they cheer us on and encourage us to be brave and figure out what Black Doom wants. Shadow naturally vows to get revenge and defeat him once and for all, yada yada yada. Nothing you wouldn't expect.
I found you, Shadow! The blue hedgehog. Of all places.
God.
Not much of plot significant happens until later on, when we pop through a portal into Sonic Generations? Oh my god, we're gonna get to play the Shadow boss fight from that game from the other point of view. Oh, no. It's just a cutscene. Damn, not here. For whatever reason, the game decides to make a point to show Shadow picking up the real Yellow Emerald, which I think he uses later on to power up against Doom. I mean, he doesn't have all 7, and he can already Chaos Control, so why? We meet Rouge and, oh great, she literally says and does nothing. This is starting to get a bit tiresome, honestly. Rouge literally had a few words at the beginning, and then later at the end of the game, and that's it. She had nothing else of consequence to say. I'm just gonna make this easy and get us right to the climax, and honestly, I'm not skipping much here. We rendezvous with Gerald and Maria again, but now Doom's floating moon spews open and pops out aliens, soldiers, and the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, the memes really weren't exaggerating. He really loves Radical Highway, guys.
What is happening? The whole place is Radical Highway now? Bro, he loves Radical Highway.
Obviously, I realize why. He's trying to provoke Shadow using the imagery that is likely the most sensitive to him given his state of mind during those events, but still, it's starting to read as comical. We get our wings and fly off to the moon, taking the fight to Doom. Radical Highway starts off looking the same as we've always known it, but slowly through the course of both acts, it starts to devolve until eventually we're screaming through upside-down geometry and taking on giant Black Bull-style alien generals. Finally, it's time. Shadow takes on Doom, and this time it's for keeps. He puts up no small resistance, all the while trying to manipulate and goad Shadow into his baser instincts. Our hero surfs down the highways, morphs through the goo, and flies through the squares, and lands blow after blow on the giant menace. Even the transformation into his ultimate form, Neo Devil Doom, is not enough to hold back the black and red hedgehog. After all, he came here to prove he truly is the ultimate life form and the master of his own destiny. He's no tool for Doom to manipulate and use to do his bidding, delivering the literal kick of the ages, resulting in a hilariously large explosion. Shadow pierces right through the center of the gelatinous blob of a villain. It's over. Truly. And thank God for it, man. Doom's voice was really getting annoying.
After the battle, Shadow returns to his friends, only now Gerald and Maria are starting to fade away since Shadow finally confronted his demons one last time. Now there's only one more thing to confront, saying goodbye to Gerald, and more importantly Maria, for the final time.
This scene is heartbreaking in such a melancholy and beautiful way. I don't love that Shadow doesn't look back to Maria, he just speeds off and sheds a single tear as they disappear into the distance, but I'm glad he got the closure he did. I didn't mention it at the time because I wanted to save it for right now, but Maria dropped a bit of backstory earlier on Shadow's name. Essentially, she named him that because wherever there is a shadow, there is always light, and I think that that's just really touching. I'm certainly not too man to admit that I was holding back tears during my playthrough while recording. It helps to show us that although he's edgy and a tough guy, Shadow is a beautiful individual, and for so many years he was hurting and lost and confused. He didn't know where he fit in, and he was mourning a devastating loss that he never really healed from.
These are some of the reasons that I love Shadow the most. I just identify so much with his character. In my youth, I faced a lot of pain and heartbreak and trauma, as many of us have, and the character just resonated with me so much for that reason. But just like Shadow, and actually the Winter Soldier for that matter, who I also identify a lot with, everyone can turn their life around, confront their demons, and face the pain that they've been dealing with.
I think it's important that we close the book on Maria once and for all, and I for one am really excited to see what's next for our hedgehog anti-hero. I think that we can just start calling him Hero, because he truly is one. During my first playthrough, I had a 2-week pause between when I opened the Doom Zone and when I actually completed the game. During that time, I decided to get some B-rolls since I was just so excited to keep playing the game, but couldn't record episodes for the playthrough while I was away from my battle station and green screen. While I was putting together footage to use for the video, I noticed something about the levels in this game, so let's get into it. First of all, every standard Act 1 and Act 2 stage has a Doom Wing mode. Of course, you have to have unlocked that power by that point in the story, and you can activate this from the main menu when you go to start a stage by pressing X, on Switch at least. This allows you to essentially blow through the level geometry, but it has its own set of rankings, separate from the standard time trial and ranking system for each zone. This grants a great deal of replayability for speedrunning and time attacks, which is nice given how few stages there are. In addition to the Doom Wing option for each stage, merely having the Doom Zone active in whitespace will change the world. First, each Ring Collection minigame will be a hard mode variant of itself. As far as I can tell, they follow similar paths, but you need many more rings. And the rings themselves are laid out in a way that's harder to complete in time. Next, keep an eye on those challenge gates. When you change the world by interacting with the Doom Moon, it will open a 5th and 6th challenge gate for each stage, basically a 3rd challenge for each act. This is a hard mode challenge. It will always be for the first of the set of 2 challenges, so the hard mode will never apply to Chaos Control Master or Dash Ring Master style challenges, but instead to the more specific ones for each stage, like Gondola Master and crossover with Doom Morph. Lastly, and this is a welcome addition, each boss has a hard mode variant that you can challenge, but only while in Doom Zone. There's no special way you need to interact with them, nor a separate gate or interface. Simply walking up to the boss gate in Doom mode will begin the fight in hard mode from the start. Yeah, I found this out the hard way. See what I did there, guys? See? This is why you like and subscribe. Great to see that they really wanted to add as much as they could in this world. There are, of course, the art and music boxes that you can collect by obtaining keys in the stages and challenges, which should keep you busy for some time. Also, the machine parts for Orbot and Qbot, but I'm still not really sure what those will net you in the end because I haven't gotten them all yet. Having unlockable music is even better because each stage has the ability to play any of your available BGM tracks. So as you unlock more, you can play, say, Lava Shelter during Sunset Heights. Really anything is possible, especially with the deluxe song pack that you can purchase as an add-on. This is wishful thinking, but I really hope that separate from the movie DLC level, we'll eventually get a Shadow the Hedgehog 05 stage. Digital Circuit, Sky Troops, Final Haunt, guys, please, anything. Just give us a stage from that game, please! Lastly, there's a little collection room you can access in the menu which allows you to view your collected items in a nice cozy pocket of Shadow's space. I enjoy when games include these. It could have easily been just a menu, so even though it's small, it's a welcome inclusion.
As you can imagine, one of my main complaints is of course the length. We basically got 6 full stages, 4 bosses, and then 1 DLC stage which only had a single act. Of course, all of these had hard modes and challenge levels. Hopefully we will get another DLC level in the future, but that is definitely wishful thinking, and at the time of recording this in mid-February, nothing has been announced.
If I had it my way, but within reason, I would have wanted 3 sets of 2 levels, and then the 7th being Chaos Island, and then of course Radical Highway. Ultimately, that would have given us 2 more levels in the base game. Really, this could have worked. Maybe 2 adventure and 2 heroes? I mean, here's the thing. They didn't stick to just games where Shadow appeared, since they did use Chaos Island. No hate. It's a great level, but that means that we kind of threw our formula out the window a little bit. Either way, it is what it is at this point. White Space is also very cool and a great place to run around and try out your moves. I love it. My only wish is that there ended up being more of a base or hub that formed in one of the castles once it reaches about halfway and the rest of the map opens up. That would be a great place for all the characters to gather together and maybe put a minigame arcade machine or 2. Look, it's no big deal. It would just be one extra nice feature for Shadow's White Space to have. I still absolutely love the look of this place and genuinely enjoy exploring it. I love the whole Spyro homeworld feel to it, and that was one of the main reasons I vibed quite nicely skating around in the area. And once again, I really wish that we could have added more story into the levels themselves. With the exception of the very first and last stage, these really do feel like levels we're just going through for the sake of doing it. For example, why was Shadow specifically in Rail Canyon? I mean, what was he doing there? What was his goal? If we're chasing after Doom, I feel like we need to be gathering intel or chasing him down deliberately to achieve small, metered goals. Maybe we could find Omega aboard the Ark, and from Omega we download Rouge's location. Rouge can help us find the damn 4th Chaos Emerald, which we do find aboard the Ark, but not because of her help. Just little stuff like that. Those little changes I think would go a long way. Of course, the Maria and Gerald element to the story is great. I love that Maria expresses her familial and platonic love to Shadow and explains to us, the audience, that she gave our protagonist his name because where there is light, there is always shadow. I loved that inclusion, like I mentioned earlier. I think it's a beautiful sentiment. I guess maybe I wish we had to literally save them from one of the generations or memories. They sort of just appear out of nowhere. They just materialize. Obviously, the time demon setup sort of pulled a bunch of people into the void from various points on the timeline. I don't really have my own perfect solution, but I just feel like it could have been implemented a little better and married to the gameplay. In a perfect world, we'd be able to bring Shadow with these mechanics into Sonic Generations levels, but it wouldn't be possible that way. The best they could do would be to import the levels into Shadow's engine, since he would never work in that horribly optimized nightmare. God. Of course, they aren't balanced around it, but I think it would still be a lot of fun. Obviously, I realize this is the most difficult, if not impossible, thing to implement on my little wish list here. But in the context of this game itself, there's really not much else I would have asked for. So I think they did an incredible job. We need a new Shadow game with these mechanics. I really hope he will be keeping at least a couple of the Doom powers, or toned down versions of them, in his next outing. I truly hope that Sega sees that we love this character and gives us even more of him. I mean, they did do a Tiny Shadow campaign in Forces, now this, and the movie, so I think this really is our time, Shadow fans. I think he's finally shaken off the curse of that edgy game Shadow 05.
Show them that you care. Show them that you want to see more of this. The best way to show a developer that they're doing the right thing is by giving them your hard-earned money. Pay for the game, pay for the ticket to see the movie, pay for the DLC, and pay for the upcoming releases, because you know what? We need to tell these guys that they're on the right track.
Normally, I'm an advocate of protesting modern-day game releases because they're usually so janky and have tons of predatory microtransactions. I mean, half the games these days are released completely unfinished. But this truly was a labor of love, and it shows. There really is something here. A few minor gripes aside, this is a swan song to Shadow fans. If this is the direction the series is going, then I am hopeful and grateful.
Since this is my first review in retrospective, I figured it would be a good idea to get a sort of ranking system in place. That way, moving forward, we can use it when I do videos like this in the future. I've decided that I'll rank the games that I review on here on the following categories:
gameplay, content, story, music, and replayability. The gameplay for Shadow Generations is a complete and total knockout. It feels incredible at every turn, and Shadow has never felt so tight to control. There are a number of tech mechanics and special techniques you can do, and I'm so grateful that they gave him a fully realized kit. The stages also make pretty great use of this, and they themselves are very well realized. For that, I'm going to give Shadow Generations a 9 out of 10 in this category. For content, I basically will be looking at it from a point of view of how much is there to do, how many collectibles are there, how many stages if it's that kind of game, etc. As I'm sure we know, a game can have perfect gameplay all at once, but if there's barely anything to do or experience, it won't be much good. Given the collectibles in each stage and challenge stage, the robot parts to collect in white space, and the time trials there, and the fact that each stage has a second set of rankings for the Doomwing mode, we really did get quite a bit packed into a relatively small package. I truly wasn't expecting as much as we got, and that was a lovely surprise. Still though, while the stages themselves are great and substantive, only having 6.5 of them and 4 bosses will harm the ranking. I think considering all these factors, it's fair to give Shadow Generations a 7 out of 10, keeping in mind that this is a supplemental side game and not its own solo release. The story, of course, is where the game will rank the lowest, but I think it's important that we keep in mind just how powerful the ending was. This game brought meaningful and much needed closure to the Maria plot point, and has now opened up our character to new paths in the future. As I mentioned earlier, the disconnect between the actual stages and the plot is a bit jarring, but at least it can be partially explained due to it being a Generations game and needing to adhere to that style. There was only so much they could do plot-wise and keep the original premise intact. All things considered, I can only give the story component a 6 out of 10. To be honest, I feel like that's a bit generous. To absolutely nobody's surprise, I love the music in this game. We have excellent hardcore electronic remixes of every single song, including a lot of drum and bass, with a few fun retro tunes, and tons of other elements all in their right place. There is so much to love here, and they even created that great melancholy vocal tune to send off Shadow and complete the Maria arc. I still think that the Act 2 sections could have taken themselves a bit more seriously, so I think I'll land on a glorious 8 out of 10 for the music. The replayability for what we have is pretty high. Even said, despite having pretty bulky content for its size, the amount of stages will always be a detriment. If more DLC were planned, that might be a different story. As it stands now, upon 100% completion, I think it's safe to say I would play the game again here and there, purely to enjoy the high-octane gameplay. But the limited areas would perhaps get old. Still hoping modders take up the reins and bring in some new great stages. 6 out of 10.
All told, the game has received 36 out of 50 possible points. Obviously, as I said before, the replayability and the story have hindered it a little bit, but at least now nobody can say I'm biased, right?
Shadow Generations far exceeded my expectations in almost every way. I am so grateful that Shadow had such a strong showing in 2024. Between this, the movie, and even his appearance in Dream Team and the other side games. I think that the future looks bright for our jet skating friend. This was a thrilling adventure to be on, and I want to thank you folks so much for joining me on it. As a proper display of gratitude, I've prepared something special for you. You probably realized a familiar song instrumental playing here and there in the background, and maybe you assumed I was using the original. Well, I decided to do a complete cover and remake of Live and Learn by Crush 40, and I'd like to send you guys on your way with that here and now. I'm considering doing a music video for this separately on the channel, but it fit best as a closing segment for this video. Thank you once again so much for watching, and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more videos just like this. Thank you for allowing me to give you an analysis of one of my favorite characters of all time. Without further ado, here's the song. all music, except when stated otherwise or for memes and gag sections, is written, recorded, and produced entirely by me, Devious Diesel. Please do not use, distribute, or manipulate without written permission and credit. Also, the Sonic the Hedgehog songs featured in this video are property of Sega, as are the characters shown in the games and video.
Guys, I want to thank you one more time for watching. I really appreciate it. And please like and subscribe. Comment down below, what was your favorite aspect of Shadow Generations? What was your favorite stage theme remix? I want to hear it all. Keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out this year. So, all the songs in this video, that's only the beginning. I'm going to be putting out a lot more, so make sure to stay tuned for those and the upcoming videos. Thank you guys once again.